You will need a green Scantron. There will be 30 multiple choice questions. Oh yeah, and the test will be over chapters 14 to 17. I guess that's self-explanatory. 30 multiple choice by chapters 14 to 17. I'm not going to tell you that all of the tests will be multiple choice. I might make up a short answer, but this kind of caught me by surprise. I said, oh, whoops, the test is next Thursday. I've got work I need to do, so I quickly put, you got one dug up, and I've got it ready. And in looking over the test, there are a few things I noticed I better talk about. So let me tell you this now. This is after 11. So everything that's on the test will be put on the board. If I didn't put it on the board, I promise I'll throw the question out and give everybody credit for it. Everything, but now that does not mean that everything you see on the board will be on the test. Yeah, but everything, and again, now everything you see on here is in the book. Okay, is that as clear as I can make it? So if you will study what's on the board and look, and again, you should be able to do well. What I'll do during my lectures is I'll look and see what's on the board and grab it. And talk about it, explain it to where everybody understands it. Okay, before I proceed, does anybody here have any questions? If you miss a class, I plan to put my lectures on iCollege, which with iCollege you connected to YouTube. Yes?
Yeah, I missed the first class.
Okay.
I think I texted you beforehand. I don't know if you got it.
Okay. Now let me. You can text me. I must have missed it. Let me try to explain something, folk. Because I am getting so many robocalls, I have completely quit answering my telephone unless it's somebody who identifies, like my sisters or my brother or my children or my wife. So if I see my wife's name, I'll answer. If I see one of my children's name, I'll answer. But if I just see a number there and I don't know who the number is, I won't answer. So try to understand, folks.
Okay.
Try to understand. Now, I have missed an important phone call or two that way, including a call from our department head yesterday. I was sitting down having lunch at IHOP with my daughter, and he called. But anyway, I had to talk with him, so everything is cool there. But I just simply, but I'll tell you, the way to contact me, and so this is on the syllabus, do not use iCollege, please. I have all kinds of email. I don't have to, but use the school's email. I make it a point to try to check it once a day. Use the school's, and you can text. Now, why I missed your text, I don't know. You can text. And another thing, you can. My wife is much more prone to sit around the phone than I am, and also I will keep my phone off when I'm driving the car. I mean, they passed a law that it's illegal. I'll keep my phone off, and I have my phone off right now. So if anybody ever try to go, but my wife's phone, my wife stays close to the phone than I do. I mean, I got my wife's cell on the syllabus. You can text her. Don't call her if she doesn't know you. She's not going to pick up. It's an agreement we came to. Most of these robocalls, I think we're all getting, and someday they might be able to solve the problem. Okay, so much for that. Anyway, now the syllabus. Hopefully you have it. A couple of things I want to emphasize. Number one, there is a paper assigned. Now, folk, let me try to explain to you. This paper is designed to where, if you have trouble with my multiple choice test, and you do a good job on the paper, you can still get a fairly decent grade. I grade the papers pretty leniently. Well, I take off if you say has did or I done, things like that. I take off, but still, I grade the papers fairly leniently, unless you don't have the 1,000 words. Now, if you put down 500 words, I'm going to count 50 points off your paper right there. Is that clear? Okay, for 1,000. Now, hey, when I was a kid, 1,000 words seemed like a lot, but with today's word processors, 1,000 words is a breeze. Really is. But it's a good, but here's the drawback. If you don't do it, it will lower your grade by 2 whole letters. How's that? All right. Suppose you have 100 test score. I count that twice. That's half your grade. supposing you have 100 on the final exam, and you have a 0 on the paper, 300, okay, 300 divided by 4, that's 4 items, equals 75. Hopefully all of you know what I just did. Yeah, I mean, I talked to a math teacher one time who said if his kids can't compute their grade, he won't let them in class. This is not a math class, but nevertheless, and again, folk, all this kid had to do was turn in half a paper. Well, that's still a B. That's not quite an A. But if he'd have turned in more than half a paper, he'd have made an A in the class. 4 to 360 equals 90. Hopefully you've seen that done before. I mean, I'm doing it the old-fashioned way with you. Hopefully you know what I'm doing. So, again, now there was one class I had a few years back where every student in the class did a paper. But that's rare. Somebody always does. Now, I don't mean to scare you. Let me try to reassure you. And this is something that my bosses know. 2/3 of my pupils who finish my class make A's and B's. This is a fact. I mean, I can show you the grade. I couldn't show you the names, but I can show you the grade. 2 out of 3 students who finish my class, the ones who don't oftentimes either did not turn a paper, now, okay, or did not take the final exam, or didn't take three of the 4 tests are required. 3 tests out of 4. You can miss one. The low score is thrown out. All right. So anyway, the paper, and oh yeah, if you're wondering when the test, now, folk, for years I'd have students who tell me, I didn't know there was a test today, so I'm really careful to announce it. But, if you miss the class, all of you know, now you're adults, all of you know, check the syllabus. Understand me? Check the syllabus. Or check my lectures online, but yeah, check the syllabus. Right now. Make sure this thing is still.
Is the paper due the 11th of July or?
Yeah, that's on the syllabus, so I better have to tell you. This time I'm going to give you a better answer than that. All right, there's 3 rules about the paper. The, the paper now. By the way, July 5th, last day withdrawal. Okay, paper's due on the 11th of July, but early turn-in is on July 9th. Now, what do I mean by early turn-in? To make it easier on myself, I will add 6 points to any student who turns their paper in on or before July 9th. Why is that? So I can get started grading earlier, and so it's just a bit easier on myself. And also, now here's the bad news. Does any of you know which kind of student turns your paper in early for the extra credit? Anybody know?
The ones who kiss ass?
No.
Oh, no.
Hey, listen, this is, we got to be careful with the use of the language, you know. We have both sexes in here. What's our language? What's your language? It's usually the A+ students who don't need the extra points anyway. What I do is I grit my teeth and give those students the extra points. But they're the ones, I mean, who, and by the way, what you're talking about, brown nosing up to me, it will not work.
I respect.
All right, it won't. I grade by averages only. Now, folks, I tried to get you to understand.
It's a man's
You're
game.
you're missing 3 students who don't have the ability to tolerate diversity of opinion. And I'm not talking about you. I think you students can, but 3 students who can't tolerate diversity of opinion are gone. I think I'm just as well off without it. But my lesson today, a part of it, is going to be about how important it is to allow the differentiation of opinion. Now, if you look on iCollege, there's a sample paper. This sample paper is not anything I agree with. This sample paper was written by a student from South Asia. That's as specific as I'm going to get. And here's what he says. He said, in the United States, he came to the United States to take college. He said, the Senate often disagrees with the president. Now, folk, there has never been a truer statement ever uttered. Yeah, all of you, I think, know. Our senators sometimes disagree with our president. Isn't that awful? No, that's not awful. We believe in dissent in this country. We believe in the freedom to dissent. You have the freedom to disagree with me if you wish to. Just be civil about it now, be civil. You have the freedom to disagree with me, or you have the freedom to state your lines. But some folks do not understand that. All right, let's see, is there anything else I need to, from the syllabus? Well, I've got the syllabus right here in front of me. I try to stick to it hard. Now, if you notice, today I finish up chapter 15. I did not finish up chapter 15 on Tuesday. I did not intend to, didn't plan to. So I'll finish up and then go to chapter 16. This will not be on the test, but I'm going to write it down. I protest. This is what the word Protestant means. Protester. The freedom to protest, the freedom to disagree. I disagree with what you're saying, and it's okay. I protest. We're going to, in chapter 16, talk about a group of people who do not have this freedom. All right, again, that one will not be on the test. No. In fact, I don't even know if it's in the book or not. But anyway, all right, anything else I need to... I'll think about it and mention it as I need. That I've been told I have a bigger syllabus than most professors have. I mean, I was told down through the years includes something about sexual harassment, includes something about the inclusion of everybody, regardless of race, color, national origin. I think I do, folks, that Scantron machine, when it grades your test, it doesn't care whether you're male or female or Catholic or Protestant or Muslim or Jewish or Mormon or whatever. It doesn't care. It doesn't know and it doesn't care. Your grades will be based on averages. Will there be a curve? If the grades are so low that I need to, yes. But if 3 or 4 people make hundreds and 5 or 6 others make A's, there'll be no curve. So I'll decide that at the time. I really believe that in a class like this, a summer class, students who come to a summer class are generally more dedicated and more, motivated. So, I mean, because you could be out playing golf or swimming or whatever else the kids like to do these days, or looking at your iPhone or iPad or whatever and playing computer games. But you're here to better yourself, and I'm here to try to assist you in that endeavor. All right. Now, with that out of the way, anybody have any questions? Okay. I'll move on. One thing, I mentioned this last time, Luther's 95 Thesis, but in case you missed it, I don't think I wrote it down. Martin Luther wrote 95 things on the door of a church where he challenged anyone to debate him about 95 areas where he disagreed with the church, particularly where he disagreed with the Pope. 95, and they all concerned religion. Nothing there about politics, nothing there about mathematics or science. It was all the church. So I thought, well, maybe I'd better just clarify that more. It was all about theology. People have tried to say that Luther was interested in economics, but the fact is, I mean, as best as any one of us can tell who really studied him, Luther, only religion can explain Luther. Not philosophy, not anything else. All right, now, I mentioned the witchcraft, but something I did not mention, I don't think, so I wrote it down in longhand. The witchcraft craze came to an end when the religious fervor died down. Now, the religious fervor began to die down when the Little Ice Age ended and the climate started warming up. That Ice Age business, folk, I don't know if many of you picked up on it. Ice ages appear to occur about every 350 or 400 years. And if that be the case, we'll do another one. And it appears to me that because, like the sun, every star we observe brightens and dims, brightens and dims, brightens and dims. And our star might be said. At one time we thought the output of our sun was a constant, but now we know it isn't. our star, our sun, brightens and dims, and when it dims, it cools things down. Now, you have been told that we're in the middle of a climate warming and things are going to warm up, and one day it's going to run away, and the polar ice caps will melt, and the big Antarctic ice cap will melt, and the ocean levels will rise by 300 feet. It might happen, and then again, we might just all of a sudden start turning cold within about a year or two. It can happen. Because here's the problem. We're in a very, very low sunspot cycle right now. I know this being a ham radio operator. Communications depend on sunspots. The more sunspots, the better communication. Now, how many of you know what I'm talking about? You do? Very good. Okay. But anyway, we're in a very, very low sunspot cycle right now. And this might be meaning that the sun is about to cool down. If not in this cycle, the next cycle will probably occur in about 7 or 8, 9 years. All right. Anyway, now, something else I did not mention. Well, I'll get to that in a little bit. All right. I left off last time. Okay, let's see. Left off last time with France. After the end of Louis XIV's reign, France was impoverished and had enemies on all sides. All right. We're going from France to Central and Eastern Europe. The one thing you want to remember about Central Europe, I mean, hey, there's a lot there, but folk, we don't have time for it all. A new nation was formed called Prussia. You will see Prussia in your history books. Prussia eventually joined with the other states to form Germany, but Prussia was the biggest state in what was then called Germany. Now, Germany in those days was a geographical term. It was not a nation. Just like Scandinavia. Yeah, there is a place in this world called Scandinavia, but it's a geographical term. It's not a country. And someone said, Korea is not a nation. I said, no, but there's a place in this world called Korea. The nation is North Korea and South Korea, 2 nations. And there is a place in this world called Arabia, but Arabia consists of about 4 different countries. But nevertheless, there isn't a place called Arabia. Well, there was a place in the world called Germany at the time, but Germany was not a nation. The biggest nation in Germany was Prussia. And Prussia eventually joined with the other German nations to become Germany. This happened in 1870. But Germany was to remain ununited for all these years. Germany and Italy. Italy consisted of a whole bunch of little bitty states. The state of Genoa, the state of Florence, the state of Venice, and the Papal States. This was Italy. Italy and Germany were to remain disunited until 1870 when both of them united. All right. Leaving Prussia for a while, Russia. Russia is huge, but they didn't have a whole lot of people living in it at the time, but they are very, very large. They take up about more than a third of Europe. All of Europe, I mean just the European part of Russia. Now if you look at the map today, Russia consists of Europe and Asia. The Asian part is called Siberia. And yes, I didn't realize, but for generations, like hundreds of years, the Russian people have been sending their undesirable people into Siberia, and they still do. You commit a crime, and if they say, hey, go to Siberia and serve out your sentence there. They want people to move into Siberia, but there's just not much there to invite people. Not much there other than snow. A lot of snow, a lot of cold weather. Now, Russia knew they were behind the rest of the world, particularly they were behind the West, and they tried to play catch up. This was true in the 1500s and the 1600s, and it's true now in the 2000s. Russia still would like to catch up. A great ruler came into Russia about this time called Peter the Great. Oh yeah, by the way, the capital of Russia moved to Moscow before Peter's time, but that's another story. But Peter the Great became the ruler of Russia, and he tried to catch Russia up to the rest of the world. He called in scientists from Western Europe, called in French scientists, and called in Scottish scientists and British scientists. It's even been said he invited Sir Isaac Newton to come over to Moscow and teach his people. He tried to catch up with the rest of the world, but he couldn't quite do it. He built up the Russian Navy. If I could go back in time, I'd say, Peter, what you need to do is turn your people loose, and they will become what you want to become. But if you're trying to control it, and a problem Peter had was he tried to build Russia, but again, he was so, the man stood 6'7", in a day when the average height of the men were about 5'8", yes.
I know this is a little correction, but it says 6'9" in the book.
Oh, 6'9"?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The book I read, he stood 6'9". He towered above everybody else, and he would try to disguise himself. He went to Holland one time and tried to disguise himself as a Holland traveler, but he couldn't hide behind his big height. Everybody knew him, and that's Peter. That's Tsar Peter, Peter Alexeyevich. That means Peter, son of Alexis. Anyway, he was quite large, but he was intimidating to where even his own closest officials feared him. He would scold them in the most childish of tones, and he eventually realized that he was to blame for why a lot of his reforms did not work. But a lot of persons believe too that he was criminally insane. He might have been. Now, Peter the Great apparently had a genetic defect that all his family had, beginning perhaps with Tsar, Peter's grandfather, Michael. Now, Peter's grandfather was Michael. It's believed that there was a genetic defect that was passed down to all these czars that eventually led to the czars being overthrown and the last czar line and his family lined up in front of a firing squad and shot dead. Okay. I've been criticized for jumping around in the story, but I think it's important to know where all this is going to lead is the end of the Tsarist rule of Russia. Peter the Great insisted that he was absolute ruler, he was absolutely in control, and his orders were to be obeyed without question. When he visited England, he saw that King William had to consult with Parliament, and King William is said to have said, Peter, I envy your autocracy, but all I can do is send what I want to Parliament, and my bills are defeated often in Parliament. Peter would never have tolerated that. I mean, hey, what I say goes. But he insisted that he was absolute ruler, and from his day, actually from the days of the previous czars, all the way till 1917, the czars insisted we are in absolute control. All right. Again, I read a 600-page book about Peter the Great one time. I still have it. And it has a lot of history about that period. But also, back in 1986, what made me write a book, they had a 6-hour series, two hours one night, 2 the next, 6-hour TV series about Peter the Great, but much of that was fiction. The main history was there, but a lot of it was fiction. Now, I'll say this about the movies, historical movies. Because the movie industry has been criticized so severely for taking liberties with the truth, more and more movies are now trying to stick to the facts and not interpolate a lot of fiction in with the facts. But more and more. But Peter the Great movie had a lot in it that simply would have been better off if it had been left out. Peter the Great lived in the Kremlin. Maybe all of you know, maybe you don't, the palace where the Russian leaders live is called the Kremlin. The Kremlin was not built by Peter, it was actually built by the Tsar before him. All right.
How do you spell it?
Kremlin, K-R-E-M-L-I-N. The Kremlin is located along the Volga River in Moscow. Again, don't write that down. Well, Moscow, yeah. The Volga River runs through Moscow.
Just gotta be safe. Man.
Okay, the Volga River runs, but throwing a little bit of extra stuff in, it might help you to remember it. Now, back to Italy and Spain, the Catholic Church resorted to the infamous Inquisition to try to get its way. Now, yes.
Sorry, not to backtrack, going back to Peter the Great.
Yeah.
You just want us to know who he is, or?
That he was Tsar of Russia, and that he tried to westernize his people. Well, I mean, to give an extreme, at one point, he told the Russian men, whether you want to or not, every one of you must smoke.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, he passed the law. And then he once went into a room where some high-up Russian officials were. He had a servant him. They started grabbing all the men and shaving their beards. But one man who was a priest, he said, you're exempt, you can keep your beard. Now, the beards were so necessary because the beards helped the Russian men keep out the cold. But chins that hadn't been seen in decades were suddenly visible. But he said, I want you, and he made his people dress in breeches like Western men did. Again, because the Russian men were dressing in gowns. But hey, again, the gowns were what it took to keep out the Russian cold. And keep that in mind, the Russians is very cold. Now, all right, something else I'm going to mention now because I will mention later. Peter the Great's army was invaded one time by the King of Sweden. The King of Sweden had a bigger and better army. But a blast of cold air came down and wiped out the King of Sweden's army, or a lot of it, and enabled Peter to win. Now, that's one of 3 times in world history, recent world history, that the Russian cold weather destroyed an army. Does anybody have any idea what the other 2 were? Yes.
One was in World War II against the Germans.
World War II, yeah, I'll tell you now. Hitler had it all planned out. The first cold wave will come, okay, but the first cold wave came 3 weeks earlier than Hitler said it would. And all the Russians had to do was get their parkas, and they were comfortable. And the Germans were left out in the cold without proper attire. And the cold blast froze them to death. But before that, though, Napoleon tried the same thing. Napoleon invaded, I don't know if you've heard it. Napoleon invaded Russia, and the Russian cold winter swooped down. The Russians could handle it. They had the proper clothing. Napoleon's men were left without the clothing, and they froze. Yes.
One more thing. When Napoleon invaded Russia, I don't know who's the commander of the Russian army, but I think it's Alexander.
Alexander I was the Tsar when Napoleon invaded.
Yes,
Tsar Alexander I.
And he said, just burn everything. And then the French army, they cannot find anything to replenish the military supply.
Well, see, what they did, I mean, I'm jumping ahead of the story. The Russians burned everything in sight, poisoned all the wells. Then in World War II, they took up all the factory machinery and moved it far, far inland to where the Germans could not get it. And they kept their factories going, but far away. And they practiced this because they learned it under Peter. And then wait till the Russian winter comes, and the Russian winter is deadly. But again, the Russians, I mean, they had the clothing, they had the proper clothing, they could handle it. The enemy army invading, not even the Swedes.